Hello folks and welcome to this week's Hi-Fi News etc. And what have we got for you this time? Well, we have a trivia question, be on the way in a moment. We have 4 news items and I have a lengthy-ish hint tip for you. I'll tell you about it in a moment. I won't tell you right now. It'll be a surprise. So, trivia, and we're changing the theme. This time we're going classics. You know, classics, Roman Empire, bit of the old ancient Greek, that kind of thing. And our first trivia question and our classics themed question is this. I want you to name the pop star who made the top selling album of 2001, who shares a first name with the first queen of Carthage. And let's repeat that question, which is, name the pop star who made the top selling album of 2001, who shares a first name with the first queen of Carthage. As per usual, please don't do any research or Googling or any of that malarkey. I will tell you the answer to this one. A bit of a poser, this one, isn't it? I will tell you the answer at the end of this video. But until then, folks, Hi-Fi News. And I'm a bit late on this one, but just in case you may have missed it, a quickie from Origin Live and the news of the Swift Mark V turntable, which features a motor and power supply redesign. One of the major upgrades in the Origin Live Mark V line, however, is the multi-layer platter, the MLP, which features trickle-down technology from the company's flagship turntable, the Voyager. That's now incorporated as standard on all turntables above the Aurora model. Now, speaking of the Aurora model, the Swift is essentially an Aurora, but it has that multi-layer platter. So the Swift features the basic design of the Aurora turntable with its single-point cantilevered suspension, and in this system, the platter and tone arm are balanced roughly in equilibrium on the ends of a rigid sub-chassis bar. Due to the microscopic flexing of the single suspension support point, this arrangement feels the same as a rigid mechanical suspension. However, Origin Live claim that their system avoids the hardness of the typical non-suspended design. So according to the company, if you're listening to music, you get a softening of the leading edges of notes that you often find with a suspended design. The Swift also features a low friction bearing, but the star of the show is the MLP, the multi-layer platter with over 1,000 individual slots laser cut through the top layer, combined with another composite layer underneath and screwed onto the acrylic platter. The MLP layers work to diffuse surface resonance in the platter through vibrational interference. Now, I have talked to Origin Live about the MLP because I talked to the owner, Mark Baker, at the Bristol show, the Hi-Fi show at the beginning of the year. And I had a good look at the plinth. It looks fascinating. Haven't heard it yet myself, but I do wonder in that case if these turntables, if all Origin Live turntables from this point onwards, maybe they don't need a platter mat anymore because the MLP would surely take over that. I'm just thinking aloud here. So need to talk to the company about that and ask a few questions. Hey, anyway, price for the Swift is £2,290. But that's not with the arm, folks. If you want the Swift with an arm, well, you can buy, for example, the Zephyr Mark IV, and that will cost you $1,080. So really, you're looking at around, what, $3,004, give or take, for an entire finished turntable. Except the cartridge, of course. Staying Staying with turntables now, and I got a news item from Pure Sound, the UK outfit, who make lovely amplifiers, valve-based amplifiers of their own, incidentally. But they also do a bit of distribution for other companies. One company is called Black Forest, and they have a clamp for a top of a turntable and a mat. I mentioned mats. So this company, Black Forest, also has their own mat. Now the record clamp is known as the DAD. I think that's how I pronounce it, but I have no idea really. I think it means dead. And this couples the record directly to the platter without, says the company, contributing to any of its own sound. Now, an inert polymer forms the basis of the construction. This is a low mass unit. I think it's well under 100 grams, and I'm all for low mass in this kind of accessory, and I must get one into review. Hey, price, well, it's a relatively pricey item for this kind of thing. You're looking at £279.95. But there's also a mat, and it's called the DAD mat. The dead mat, I suppose. And this mat, well, it triggers a few questions in my mind, and you'll see why in a sec. Now, according to the company, this mat does not try to absorb energy through elastic or plastic deformation, nor does it try to achieve a neutral sound image by interference cancellation or counter-coloring. If you do that, says the company, you lose information and dynamics. So what the DAD or dead mat is a rigid mat, and under a thin skin lies a hard foam core of tiny bubbles. Now, without naming names, this sounds kind of familiar. I'm sure you'll agree. So I need to ask a couple of questions. The wafer-thin walls of bubbles can absorb the energy fed in by deformation and transform it into heat without weakening the actual shape of the mat, and then the heat is dispersed. Price for this dead mat or DAD mat is £99.95. Next up, we're looking at super high-end floor standing speakers from Magico called the S3. The new S3 features a newly engineered enclosure assembled from 4 separate extruded aluminium panels using key elements of the even more expensive M9s. I pause because I think the M9s are £1 million speakers. I could be wrong on that. Anyway, the M3s are not that expensive. I'll tell you the price in a second. But using key elements of the M9 tweeter platform, the newly designed S3 tweeter features the Magico 28mm diamond-coated beryllium diaphragm. Now, in the normal course of events, 28mm is relatively large. I'm used to seeing 25, for example. And this larger than usual size is used to access greater power handling and lower distortion. The tweeter uses a neodymium-based motor system and new acoustically improved back chamber. Moving further down, there's a 5-inch mid-range driver in the S3, and that features a cone material formed from a sort of a honeycomb aluminium core sandwiched with outer and inner layers of graphene and carbon fiber. Now, graphene also features in the 9-inch bass driver moving further down the speaker. Now, graphene, what is this graphene? Well, it's a sort of nanotech thing. It's a hexagonal lattice of carbon, you might say. Now, apparently it's rather strong, and when I say rather strong, I mean 50 times the tensile strength of high carbon steel. Now, intriguingly, these are 4 ohm speakers with a sensitivity of 88 decibels, which being 4 ohms is no real surprise. And they have a weight, and there is lots of weight here, of 222 pounds. Price from £56,998. And before we move on, I always wonder when I'm slurping my coffee and having a muse, why prices like that exist. Why is it £56,998 and not 999.99 pence. For example, I always wonder why they go to 998. Why not 997 or 995? Well, hey, these are some of these sad things I think about on a regular basis. And finally, we're staying with speakers and the high end, and this time Linn, who have the top of the range 360 speakers. Now these are active speakers. You gotta plug them in. There's a power point on the rear. But that's the rear. What about the front? And at the top, you won't be surprised to hear, is a tweeter. This is a 19. This is a relatively small tweeter compared to the Magicos. Hey, this is a 19mm beryllium dome, tooled by the company itself. Now, Linn reports that the distortion and the resonance of the tweeter has been pushed way high, way above the range of human hearing, apparently. The mid-range dome is crafted from thin ply woven carbon fiber, combining stiffness and lightness. Both upper and lower bass drive units employ an aluminium-magnesium alloy, also selected for their stiffness. There's also a pair of lower bass drivers that have a greater range and more than double the excursion than Linn's previous maximum. Part of the reason that bass performs so well, says Linn, is because inside the speakers is a combo DAC power amp unit. One of the features of these speakers is adaptive bias control. So, amplifier technology uses real-time dynamic management and correction to tackle distortion. Meanwhile, check out the rather curvaceous cabinets. Each cabinet speaker tapers from the bottom to the top. This shape means that the drivers emanate sound out and away from the speaker without any obstruction. The 360 is available in two flavors. You've got the exact integrated variant for use in conjunction with the Linn DSM network music player, with all the crossover amplification and DAC conversion circuitry located inside. And the price for that is a rather hefty £87,500. You can also get a passive active bass variant. Hence, the passive version, you can use that with third-party amplification or an all-external Linn exact system using an exact box. Price for that? Well, it's lower because, you're losing the internal gubbins. Price for that is still a healthy £55,000. Contact points for all of these things, you'll find them down in the description. Now, that is your hi-fi news. Let's do a hint, a tip. Now, this hint and tip is a little bit different, but it's really a response to a few queries I've had over weeks and months, if not years. So what is it? Well, playing records is not always about top quality, high-end hi-fi equipment, and nor should it be. Hi-fi, as I always say, is merely a tool. The music is the priority, and well, some people I've come across tend to lose focus and forget that, I feel. It's not the hi-fi folks, and even so, when hi-fi is discussed, there's plenty of other options out there. Options that maybe the hi-fi media ignore too often, partly because a lot of these options are second-hand or vintage in nature, shall we say. Now, some people like to go retro, or, as I say, even further back, vintage. For example, my first childhood record player was it was a Dansette Lite. It wasn't Dansettes, because that wasn't the brand. I wish I could remember what it was. But it was a Dansette-like record player in a suitcase, and a lid. You clip the lid and then you could pick it up and walk off with it. Well, you could stagger off with it because it weighed a ton. Now, I know plenty of people out there who desire such a record player today. They want to have that original Dansette-like record player in their house playing the current vinyl collection right now. And I'm not talking about the Cheap and Nasty, Crossley et al. Brand type of record players, and they are cheap and nasty. I'm talking about the original late 60s, early 70s Dansette type suitcase record players. Now the thing is, when I hear people talking about returning to those days, because it's a nostalgic thing, isn't it? It's sort of, it sparks many memories for people. Such people, anyway, when they're looking to buy, they look at second-hand, which is obvious because they're all second-hand. Problem is, though, they go headlong searching in second-hand shops, junk shops, car boot sales, that kind of thing, hoping to pick up a bargain. And yes, in these places, you can pick up a low-priced example. But my advice is, do buy the Dansette-type record players, but bite the bullet and pay a fair market value for a fully serviced model. Otherwise, you're asking for trouble, as parts will fail if they haven't failed already because of no maintenance. The operation of the actual record player itself will be hampered by old and hardened grease in the actual working gubbins bit. There will be added failure rates, failing capacitors, for example. There will be dirty and noisy contacts and a whole heap of other issues. If you get yourself a properly serviced model, then all of these issues should disappear. So if you want a Dansette type providing you with trouble-free and long-term use, you're going to have to pay. You're going to have to pay, well, I have seen some models on eBay for £200. I would be prepared to pay 400, even 5 is not uncommon for a well-serviced, nicely prepared, well-looked after Dansette type record player. So that's the first hint and tip for your Dansette types. Go for the properly serviced model. And if you see serviced models on eBay, don't be afraid about asking questions. Ask exactly so eBay can see this. Ask them to list exactly what they have done in their servicing schedule. What have they replaced? Because you might get some guy who's picked up a Dansette from a car boot. He's given it a bit of a once-over with a wet wipe, and then he says, serviced, which obviously is not what I would say is serviced. But with other products, let's say retro computers that I've looked at, for example, then that has happened. So you want this guy to list exactly, point by point, what he has done with this Dansette. You want a list. And then if you argue the toss later on, eBay has a record of this. And if you say, actually, no, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. And eBay will say, yep, this guy said he did it. So you've got some comeback. You can get your money back. So ask questions. In terms of searching in the first place, principally, there may be others, but principally the Dansette type came with two kinds of plinth. There was the BSR plinth, and there was another plinth type by Garrard. And I would go for the Garrard in terms of sound quality. Now, sound quality is relative in a Dansette type model, but even so, if I was going to choose between one or t'other, I would go for the Garrard. Finally, if you do have a choice, and there are brand names being thrown about left, right, and center, who do you look for? Which one is your priority? Well, I would say if you can, I mean, any well-serviced Dansette is appealing. So I wouldn't get too anal about this. But if you have the option, and if it's there, then look out for the Hacker brand. They have a reputation, a good reputation, of just being kind of the Rolls-Royce of Dansettes. Hacker. Check them out. There's different types. You may find later models. I've seen some later 70s models, which are not Dansettes at all. They're more sort of all-in-one music centers, but that's a different thing. The Hacker brand does produce, or has produced, not does, has produced very nice quality Dansettes back in the day. So there's a name to look out for. Now, if you do decide to grab a serviced Dansette type, then be prepared to wallow in the nostalgia of those mechanically automated working parts and the sepia glow of the amplified sound. Also, be prepared to smile a lot when you're listening to your favourite music. And that's it, folks. Thank you very much for staying to the end of this video. But before we go, you will need an answer to the trivia question. Hey, and to repeat the question, name the pop star who made the top-selling album of 2001 who shares a first name with the first Queen of Carthage. And the answer is Dido. Carthage, which was a major power in the first millennium BC, was situated in northwest Africa and had a queen named Dido. The current Dido Florian Cloud de Boonvial O'Malley Armstrong's first album, phew, that's a mouthful, that was called No Angel, sold a whopping 21 million copies worldwide in 2001, which is a quantity of albums sold from a world no less vanished than Carthage. So now you know. Anyway, thank you for staying to the end of this video. I'll be back with another one next week, and I hope to have your company then. Until that time, folks, bye-bye for now.